people love to dream, and we should. It's one of the unique gifts of being human. To sit quietly for a moment and imagine the possibilities. To think about where you could go, who you could become, what you could build. That's an extraordinary privilege. A bird doesn't dream of building a business. A cow doesn't dream of traveling the world. But you and I, we have that ability. We can project ourselves into the future and design a picture of what we'd like life to look like. That's a marvelous gift. But here's the catch. If all you do is dream, you'll be left with frustration. I've met people who have the most magnificent dreams, but they don't know how to begin. They keep looking out at the horizon, and the horizon keeps moving further away. So tonight I want to remind you of something simple. Dream big, but begin with small steps. Think of it like a ladder. The top may hold the vision of where you want to go, but you can't leap from the ground to the top rung. You've got to start with the first one. And isn't it interesting that the first rung is usually only a few inches off the ground? That's by design. Life never asks you to take the giant leap right away. It asks you to start where you are, with what you've got, and take the next small step. When I was a young man, I had some very big dreams. I wanted wealth. I wanted influence. I wanted the lifestyle of freedom I saw others enjoying. But my problem was, I didn't know how to get started. And then I met a man named Earl Shoaff, who became Mr. Shoaff. And one of the first things he said to me was, Jim, the greatest value of the future is that it can be designed. But you must begin now, and you must begin with what's small. That advice turned my life around. At the time, I was broke. I was behind on my promises. I had more month than money. But Mr. Shoaff told me, don't curse the small beginnings. Don't despise the little steps. That's where the miracle begins. And he was right. Let me ask you a question. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And how do you run a marathon? One step at a time. It's the same with dreams. You don't build a fortune in a day. You don't become wise overnight. You don't transform your health in a week. But you can start with a single dollar saved, a single book read, a single workout finished. Small steps. What makes the difference is consistency. Anyone can do a small thing once, but success comes from doing it again and again and again. Mr. Shoaff said to me, what's easy to do is also easy not to do. And that's the great dividing line. It's easy to skip the small step. It's easy to tell yourself, I'll start tomorrow. But tomorrow turns into next week, and next week into next year. And before long, the dream is gone. So if you've got a big dream, and I hope you do, the challenge is to identify the first small step and take it today. If you want to be wealthy, the step might be saving $1 instead of spending it. If you want to be healthy, the step might be walking around the block. If you want a strong relationship, the step might be writing a note or making a call. Small things that begin to move you in the right direction. The big dream inspires you, but the small steps change you. They build discipline. They build momentum. They build belief. You begin to see that change is possible. And once you taste progress, once you see the evidence stacking up, the dream doesn't feel so far away anymore. So tonight, keep your dreams alive. Don't let anyone steal them. But remember, the secret to reaching them is starting small, staying steady, and letting time compound the results. Because time is the multiplier of discipline. The days add up, the weeks add up, the years add up, and one day you'll look back and say, I can't believe how far I've come. Now, once we've established that big dreams require small beginnings, the question becomes, why do so many people never start? Isn't that an interesting question? They have the dream. They talk about the dream. Sometimes they even write it down. But when it comes to taking the first step, they hesitate. I've found there are usually two reasons. One, they underestimate the value of small actions. They think, what good will saving $1 do? What difference does reading 10 pages make? And because the action feels too small, they dismiss it. But remember, the small is not the end. It's the beginning. It's the seed, not the harvest. And if you despise the seed, you'll never enjoy the fruit. Two, they overestimate the size of the challenge. They look at the whole mountain and say, I could never climb that. They see the gap between where they are and where they want to be, and it overwhelms them. But here's the truth. You don't climb a mountain in a leap. You climb it step by step, camp by camp, day by day. And if you can just focus on the next small step, the mountain shrinks in your mind. Let me give you a personal example. When I first started in business, I was intimidated by the men and women who had achieved so much. I thought, how could I ever get there? But then I remembered Mr. Schof's words. Don't let the size of the goal intimidate you. Let the size of the step encourage you. So instead of worrying about how to make a fortune, I worried about how to make my first $100. And once I made the 100, I thought, now let's see if I can make 200. And it grew from there. That's the beauty of small steps. They give you proof. They show you that progress is possible. And once you see progress, you gain confidence. Confidence breeds more action. More action produces more results. And the cycle continues. Here's what Mr. Schof taught me. He said, Jim, success is not a cataclysmic event. Success is a series of little disciplines practiced every day. Think about that. You don't wake up one morning and suddenly you're successful. No. You've been making deposits into the bank of success all along, day after day, discipline after discipline. And then one day, the world calls you an overnight success. Isn't that funny? They see the harvest, but they never saw the planting. The same is true with failure. Failure is not one big event. Nobody ruins their life in a single day. Failure is a few neglected disciplines repeated every day. A few excuses, a few delays, a few compromises, and then one day the results catch up. Success and failure are both processes. They both begin small. So the key is to get on the success side of the process. Start with one new discipline, just one. Don't try to change everything overnight. If you want to transform your health, don't set a goal to run 10 miles tomorrow. Start by walking a mile today. If you want to improve your finances, don't try to save half your income if you've never saved before. Start with $1. If you want to build wisdom, don't commit to reading a book a day. Start with 10 pages. Because here's what happens. Once you do one, you can do two. Once you do two, you can do three. And momentum begins to carry you. Motion creates emotion. Progress creates passion. And before long, what was once hard becomes easy, and what was once small becomes big. I'll never forget a man who came to me after a seminar many years ago. He said, Jim, I've been wanting to get rich for 20 years, and it hasn't happened yet. I asked, well, how much have you saved in those 20 years? He said, nothing. I said, then it's no mystery. Wealth begins with the first dollar saved. He laughed, but then he understood. He'd been dreaming big, but never willing to start small. So don't wait for the big opportunity. Don't wait for the perfect time. Don't wait until everything lines up. Begin with what you have, where you are, and trust the process. Because the small steps, faithfully taken, will lead you to places you can't even imagine right now. You see, sometimes people think small steps are just about action, just about doing things. And that's true. but it's not the whole picture. Small steps also happen in the mind. Small shifts in thinking, small changes in attitude. Those are often the steps that unlock everything else. See, if you change your actions, but not your philosophy, the change won't last. But if you change your philosophy, even just a little, your actions will follow. That's why one new idea can change a life, just one. You don't need 100 new ideas. You just need one good idea that you apply. When I met Mr. Schoaf, it wasn't that he gave me 1,000 lessons in one night. He gave me a handful of ideas that hit me so hard, I couldn't stop thinking about them. One of them was this: success is not something you pursue. Success is something you attract by the person you become. That idea shook me. Up until then, I thought success was something you chased. But now I realized it was about becoming. And when I let that idea sink in, it started to change my actions naturally. That's why I encourage people to read 10 pages a day, not a book a day, 10 pages a day. It doesn't sound like much, but over a year, that's over 3,000 pages. That's like a dozen good books. And a dozen good books can reshape your whole philosophy. They can give you the ideas you need to unlock the dream. And it's the same with listening. You don't have to listen to motivational talks all day long. Just a few minutes consistently. Over time, the voice of wisdom begins to drown out the voice of doubt. That's a small step in thinking that produces big changes in living. Now let's talk about habits. Habits are nothing more than small steps, repeated. That's what they are. You don't create a habit by doing something once. You create it by doing it over and over until it becomes automatic. And once it's automatic, it begins to shape your life without much effort. I'll give you an example. Early in my career, I developed the habit of keeping a journal. Nothing fancy, just notes, quotes, observations, and lessons. At first, it seemed small, just a few lines a day. But over time, that journal became a treasure chest. It became a record of my growth, a collection of insights I could go back to. And it gave me material to teach others, a small daily step that turned into a lifetime resource. Now let me give you the opposite example. I once knew a man who developed the habit of stopping for a drink after work. Just one. Seemed small. But one became two. Two became three. And soon, it was a lifestyle that robbed him of his health, his money, and his family. Small steps, but in the wrong direction. That's the other side of the principle. Small steps work both ways. They lead you up or they lead you down. Success or failure, growth or decline. The direction is your choice, but the principle never changes. And here's something else to remember. People often want to know the big secret. They think there must be some mysterious key that unlocks success. But the truth is, it's not a secret. It's the little things, done daily, that make the difference. What's easy to do is also easy not to do. That's the dividing line. So what's the small step in thinking? It's deciding that your actions matter, that the little things count, that today is important. If you think today doesn't matter, you'll waste it. But if you think today is a piece of the future, you'll treasure it. And the future is built one today at a time. Let me ask you, how do you measure a year? Not in grand events, not in breakthroughs. A year is measured in days, 365 of them. Stack enough good days together and you have a good year. Stack enough good years together and you have a good life. But it all comes back to the single day, the single decision, the single step. So the invitation is simple. Don't wait for the dramatic breakthrough. Don't wait for the perfect plan. Start with one new idea. Start with one new habit. Start with one small change in attitude, and then repeat it. Over time, the repetition turns the small into the significant. Now let's talk about another key: discipline. Because dreaming big will give you vision, and starting small will give you a beginning, but only discipline will carry you through. Discipline is the bridge between thought and accomplishment. It's the glue that holds small steps together until they add up to something meaningful. I used to think discipline was a burden, something heavy, something that restricted freedom. But then I discovered the truth. Discipline is what creates freedom. Without discipline, you're trapped by your moods, your appetites, your impulses. With discipline, you take control. You become the master, not the servant. And that's what allows you to build the future you want. Now, don't confuse discipline with punishment. Discipline simply means paying attention to the little things that matter. Doing what you should do when you should do it. Nothing heroic, nothing dramatic. Just consistent action. When I first started setting goals, I was excited. I wrote them all down. But soon I realized something. Goals are only as strong as the disciplines behind them. A goal without discipline is just a wish. You can wish for health, but unless you practice the disciplines of exercise and nutrition, nothing changes. You can wish for wealth, but unless you practice the disciplines of earning, saving, and investing, nothing happens. Discipline is the engine. Now, here's what's interesting about discipline. It compounds. Just like money earns interest, discipline builds on itself. Skip one workout, and it gets easier to skip the next. Do one workout, and it gets easier to do the next. That's the law of momentum. And once you get momentum on your side, it's almost effortless. But momentum doesn't show up until you've taken those early, small steps. That's why the first few days are the hardest. Starting is uncomfortable. Building a new habit feels awkward. But if you push through, soon, discipline becomes a friend. It begins to serve you. Let me share a story. Early in my speaking career, I had a friend who wanted to build wealth. He had a big dream. He said, "Jim, I want to be a millionaire." And he meant it. He was excited. But every time I asked him, "How much have you saved this month?" his answer was nothing. "But I will when I make more." That was his mistake. He thought discipline came after abundance, but it's the other way around. Abundance comes after discipline. If you can't save $1 out of 100, you'll never save 1,000 out of 10,000. That's the power of beginning small. You prove to yourself you can handle responsibility. If you handle the small, life will trust you with the big. That's not just philosophy, that's reality. If a bank can't trust you with a small loan, they won't give you a big one. If life can't trust you with a small opportunity, why would it hand you a great one? Now, discipline doesn't just build results, it builds character. And character is what sustains you when the road gets tough. Because make no mistake, the road will get tough. There will be days when you feel like quitting. There will be times when progress seems invisible. And that's when discipline steps in and says, "Do it anyway." Have you ever noticed how easy it is to talk yourself out of doing what you know you should do? You say, "I'll do it tomorrow. I'll start next week." But tomorrow becomes never. That's why discipline must override feelings. If you let feelings run the show, you'll rarely take the small steps. But if you let discipline run the show, soon your feelings will catch up. Here's a little formula. Motivation gets you started, but discipline keeps you going. You don't need to be motivated every day. Nobody is. But you do need to be disciplined every day, because discipline doesn't ask if you feel like it. Discipline just does it. And here's the good news. Discipline, once practiced, becomes habit. And habit, once formed, becomes automatic. Imagine the freedom of having good habits that run on autopilot. Habits of health, habits of learning, habits of kindness, habits of productivity. That's when you know discipline has done its work. So remember this: the dream gives you direction, the small steps give you progress, and the discipline gives you endurance. Together, they make a powerful trio. Without discipline, the small steps never add up. But with it, even the smallest effort compounds into something extraordinary. Now let's talk about time, because if dreams require small steps and discipline, then time is the environment where it all plays out. Time is the soil. You can't rush the harvest. You can't plant in the morning and eat in the evening. Life doesn't work that way. I used to be impatient. I wanted everything now. But Mr. Schoaf told me, Jim, everything of value takes time. A child doesn't grow into an adult overnight. A tree doesn't reach the sky in a week. And success doesn't arrive in a single season. Time is a critical part of the formula. The challenge is, time will pass whether you use it or not. Isn't that something? 5 years will go by. The question is, where will you be at the end of those 5 years? You could be in the same place, or you could be 5 years ahead. And it all depends on the small steps you take today. I once asked a man, where will you be in 10 years? He said, well, about the same as now. I said, then you've just predicted your own future. That's the danger of not using time wisely. But here's the opportunity. If you decide to read, to grow, to save, to exercise, 10 years from now, you won't even recognize yourself. Time magnifies discipline. Let's bring it down to the practical. Suppose you decide to read just 10 pages a day. Doesn't sound like much, but in a year, that's 3,650 pages. That's about a dozen books. Now multiply that by 5 years. That's 60 books. Imagine the ideas, the wisdom, the perspective you'd have. People would call you lucky, but luck had nothing to do with it. It was time plus discipline. Or let's take finances. Save just $5 a day. That's $150 a month. That's $1,800 a year. Doesn't sound like much, but over 10 years, with a little interest, you're looking at tens of thousands of dollars. From what? From a cup of coffee skipped. From a small step multiplied by time. Now here's the key. Most people overestimate what they can do in a week, and they underestimate what they can do in 5 years. They get frustrated when big change doesn't happen instantly, so they quit. But if they just stay steady, the results would compound. Think about the farmer. He plants in the spring, tends in the summer, harvests in the fall, and rests in the winter. That's the rhythm of life. You can't change the seasons, but you can change yourself. You can plant when it's planting time. You can tend when it's tending time. And if you do, the harvest will come. Now, let me give you a warning. Time is neutral. It will work for you or against you. Neglect doesn't show up immediately. If you eat poorly today, nothing happens. If you skip the gym today, nothing happens. If you waste today, nothing happens. But give it enough time and neglect shows up with a vengeance. Just like discipline compounds, neglect compounds too. So the choice is simple. Will you let time multiply your neglect, or will you let time multiply your discipline? Because either way, the years are going to pass. Let me tell you about a young man who once said to me, Jim, I don't want to spend 5 years building this business. That's too long, I said. How old will you be in 5 years if you don't build it? He said, well, the same age. I said, exactly. The time will pass anyway. Why not be 5 years ahead? That shifted his thinking. He realized the only thing worse than the time it takes is looking back and wishing you had started. So here's the challenge. Value the seasons. Respect the process. Trust the compounding effect of time. Don't quit too early. Because the difference between success and failure is often not brilliance, not talent, not luck. It's simply staying with it long enough. Time is not your enemy. Time is your ally if you feed it with discipline, if you plant the right seeds, if you take the small steps. One day, the harvest will surprise you. People will say, "How did you do it?" And you'll say, "Day by day, step by step, season by season." Now let's widen the lens. Because the principle of dreaming big and starting small doesn't just apply to money or business. It applies to every area of life: wealth, health, relationships, leadership, contribution. Success is not a single department. It's a way of living. Let's start with wealth. I've already mentioned saving that first dollar, but wealth is more than numbers. It's about philosophy. If your philosophy is wrong, no amount of money will fix it. That's why lottery winners often end up broke. They had money, but they didn't have the disciplines. True wealth begins with learning to live within your means, then expanding your means through productivity, then multiplying your means through investment. All of that starts small. First, you control $1, then you control 10, then 100, then 1,000. If you mishandle the small, the big will overwhelm you. Now let's shift to health. Isn't it interesting how health and wealth run on the same principle? If you want to be healthy, it's not about one dramatic workout or one perfect meal. It's about daily choices. Taking the stairs instead of the elevator, drinking water instead of soda, going for a walk instead of another hour on the couch. Small disciplines practiced consistently. And the reward is energy, longevity, and quality of life. I remember when I was traveling heavily on the speaking circuit. The temptation was always there to eat poorly, to skip exercise, to neglect sleep. But I learned that if I didn't guard my health, my wealth, and my influence, wouldn't matter much. What good is success if you don't have the vitality to enjoy it? Now let's talk about relationships. Big dreams here might look like a thriving marriage, deep friendships, strong family bonds. But those aren't built in one grand gesture. They're built in small steps: a kind word, a note of appreciation, a phone call, a moment of listening. Neglect here is costly. If you fail to water a plant, it withers. If you fail to water a relationship, it does the same. I once knew a man who worked tirelessly to build his business, but he neglected his family. He thought he could make up for it later with money, but later never came, and the relationships were lost. Success in one area doesn't make up for failure in another. Life requires balance, and balance comes from attention to the small, daily steps in each category. Leadership is another field where small steps count. People often think leadership is about charisma or position, but true leadership begins with influence. And influence is built by example. Show up on time. Keep your word. Do the little things well. That's what earns trust. And once you have trust, you have influence. And once you have influence, you have leadership. And then there's contribution, giving, service, making a difference. People sometimes think, when I'm rich, then I'll give. When I have more time, then I'll serve. But contribution starts with what you have. A few dollars given, an hour volunteered, a word of encouragement offered. You don't have to change the world in one day. You change the world by changing one life, one moment at a time. That's why I call these areas the 5 major pieces of the life puzzle: wealth, health, relationships, leadership, and contribution. They're all connected. And the principle of small steps applies to each one. You don't leap into excellence in any area. You walk there step by step, day by day. So ask yourself, what's one small step I can take in each area? What's one discipline I can practice in my finances, in my health, in my relationships, in my leadership, in my contribution? You don't need 100, just one in each. Because one step repeated becomes a habit. And a handful of good habits make for an extraordinary life. Dream big, yes. Picture the wealth, the health, the love, the influence, the legacy. But then begin where you are. Begin small. The magic of life is that the small becomes the big if you give it time, discipline, and attention. Now let's raise the energy, because dreaming big and beginning small isn't just about strategies. It's about maturity. It's about rising to the challenge of life and saying, I'm ready to be responsible for my future. Responsibility is a tough word for some people. They'd rather blame the government, blame the economy, blame their parents, their boss, their circumstances. But the day you accept full responsibility for your life is the day you begin to change it. That's the day you stop waiting for someone else to fix things and start building your own future, one step at a time. Now, responsibility doesn't mean guilt. Responsibility means ownership. It means saying, this is my life, and I'll shape it. That's the mark of maturity. And maturity is what turns dreams into reality. When I was a young man, I blamed. I had excuses stacked high. But then I met Mr. Schoaf, and he told me, Jim, if you want things to change, you have to change. If you want things to get better, you have to get better. That was the wake-up call. He didn't blame the world for my problems. He handed me responsibility. And that's when my life began to shift. Now here's what's fascinating. Once you accept responsibility, you start to see opportunities where others see obstacles. Because you're no longer waiting for perfect conditions. You're no longer wishing for luck. You're asking, what's the small step I can take right now? And that question keeps you moving forward. Let me challenge you tonight. Stop postponing. Don't wait until next year or until you're older or until the economy shifts. Begin with what you have. Begin with who you are. Begin with where you are. The perfect time never comes. The best time is always now. I've seen people wait their whole lives for the right moment, but waiting is a trap. Opportunity rarely announces itself. It whispers. And only those who are moving, those already taking small steps, hear it. Now, here's the reward for responsibility and discipline. Vision. When you dream big and begin small, you start to build belief. And belief is powerful. Belief turns a distant dream into a living possibility. And once you believe, your energy changes. Your attitude changes. People around you notice. Doors begin to open. Isn't it interesting how opportunity tends to come to those already in motion? It's almost as if life tests you. Will you take the small step before I hand you the bigger one? And if the answer is yes, life responds. But let's be honest, this path is not always easy. There will be days when you feel tired. There will be times when results are slow. There will be seasons of doubt. That's why you need a vision strong enough to pull you through. A dream so big, it keeps you moving when discipline feels heavy. Think of the marathon runner. The first mile is tough. The middle miles are grueling. But what keeps him going is the finish line in his mind. That's what your dream does. It pulls you forward. And the small steps are what carry you to the finish. So tonight, let me give you a call to maturity. Stop underestimating yourself. Stop postponing. Stop waiting for someone else to make it easier. Take responsibility, build discipline, respect time, and keep your dream alive. If you do that, there's no telling how far you can go. Remember, life doesn't respond to need. Life responds to deserve. If you want more, you must become more. If you want things to change, you must change. And the process of change begins not in leaps, but in steps. So the challenge is clear. Dream big enough to inspire you, and then begin small enough to do something about it today. Don't leave tonight without deciding on at least one small step you can take. Not tomorrow, today, because today is the building block of tomorrow. Look, I don't want you to leave tonight just inspired. Inspiration fades. What I want you to leave with is a decision to act. Because nothing changes until you change. Nothing improves until you begin. The dream sitting in your head won't build itself. The wish floating in your heart won't materialize on its own. The only way forward is steps. Small, deliberate, consistent steps. I'll tell you something I've learned. Life doesn't reward the dreamer. It rewards the doer. But the dream is what gives the doing its purpose. You need both. Dream without doing leads to frustration. Doing without dreaming leads to exhaustion. But dream plus doing, that's fulfillment. So let me leave you with a challenge. Tonight, decide on one dream you'll pursue. Don't worry if it's far away. That's good. Big dreams should feel distant. They should stretch you. But then, decide on one small step you can take immediately. Not 10, not 20, one, and then take it. Because one step is where the journey begins. I once heard it said that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and that's true. But here's the deeper truth. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with the decision to take the step. That decision is everything. Without it, the dream remains a fantasy. With it, the dream begins to take shape. So what's your step? Maybe it's saving the first dollar. Maybe it's making the first phone call. Maybe it's lacing up your shoes and taking a walk. Maybe it's writing the first page of your book. Maybe it's saying the first kind word that begins to restore a relationship. Whatever it is, don't wait. Begin. And once you begin, guard your consistency. The magic is not in the first step, it's in the daily steps. Success is nothing more than small disciplines practiced every day. And failure is nothing more than small neglects practiced every day. Both are easy. Both are possible. The choice is yours. I can promise you this. If you take small steps toward your dream, and if you sustain them with discipline, time will multiply your efforts. Seasons will reward your planting. And one day, you'll stand at a place you once only imagined. You'll look back and say, it all started with a single small step. So dream big. Don't let anyone shrink your vision. Don't let discouragement steal your hope. Don't let delay rob you of destiny. But while you dream big, remember to begin small, because the small steps are where the miracle begins. And tonight, I challenge you, not tomorrow, not someday, but tonight, make the decision, take the step, and start the process. Because the future is waiting. The harvest is waiting. Your better self is waiting. The question is simple. Will you begin?